achieve real reforms is a spot-on policy and an objective to pursue. This action has made available an additional €1 billion in financial support for partner countries for the period 11 to 13, based on evidence of clear democratic reforms. We cannot impose change upon our neighbours. They have to embrace it for themselves. Anything less will be met with distrust and resentment. We need to encourage trust, delivering projects that make a difference in people's day-to-day lives. Simple things like road safety, infrastructure improvements, water management, academic transfers, which are visible and do affect people at a normal, ordinary human level. If we can gain our neighbours' trust, the benefits are self-evident. A ring of friends who share our fundamental values. In itself an achievement that will change the lives of millions for the better and create a powerful free trade area which will also serve as support against the rising threat of extremism and international terrorism. Thank you.
Many thanks. Many thanks there, Dr. Nirj, DEVA. I wonder if the other members of the panel would like to respond to what Dr. DEVA had to say. Ambassador Khandogiy, there we had a direct response to Ukraine's relationship with Europe.
The other thing I would like to briefly, not really respond, but to draw your attention to the European Commission press release with regard to the evaluation of the elections. This topic has been touched several occasions. Just for you to understand, for the last, let's say, 10 years, Ukraine had a number of elections. In 2004, 2007, 2009, those elections were recognized by the OSCE monitors as free, fair, and exemplary sometimes. During the last elections, last fall, the OSCE monitoring group labeled those elections as a step back. This is rather a journalistic label than anything else, because then you have to go into details, what is step forward, step back. Anyway, those elections probably were not the best, and we did recognize them ourselves. Until now, 5 constituencies have not yet completed elections. Out of 450 members of the parliament, in 5 constituencies, elections were recognized as not taking place. And we are awaiting re-elections in those constituencies. But for that we need a new law and so on. And that's why, since the parliament has not been completed due to the frauds and all kinds of mismanagement of the process, elections were recognized by the Central Electoral Commission as not valid. So, and we accept that, but we are on the way to rectify that. So I would like to simply quote from countries in the East. In the East, increasingly take a different path, and some of them generally held elections in conformity with international standards. Ukraine's parliamentary elections presented a more mixed picture with several shortcomings and constituted a deterioration compared to standards previously achieved. So this is a kind of very balanced approach and evaluation of the elections. But let me tell you something. In all those elections that we held, let's say, for the last 5 or 6 years, we always got a new composition of the parliament. Not a single party was able to win the majority in the parliament, so the coalitions were all different throughout this period of time. And that testifies to the fact that the democratic life in Ukraine is very vibrant, very dynamic, and it's, again, there's a lot of room for improvement there.
What do the other 2 members of the panel? that there is improvement taking place in Ukraine, perhaps a performance of the most recent election regards the improvements made in elections of the past?
Well, I was going to comment, particularly from Dr. Comes reflects on that around elections and democracy, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I chair a group that's interested in a West African country called Guinea-Bissau, which does perfect elections. Every 5 years or so, it does perfect elections. The difficulty is that between the two rounds, the military always intervenes, but the EU, I must admit, is one organisation that actually completely understands that. Although that you get pressures for elections, that's why the Copenhagen criteria, the whole European structure is where it is, which is, and the whole neighbourhood policy is around not just elections, but all those other bits underneath it in terms of rule of law, human rights, and onto market economy or whatever. So all of that is a package. But I do think sometimes, I try to say myself, that occasionally how this is done, how this is negotiated, and how this is put over sometimes in a completely, and maybe correctly inflexible way, I don't know how else you do it, is seen as trying to impose very, very strict values and ways of doing things on a neighbourhood that maybe doesn't do it quite in the same way. And I do think sometimes that in some of the eastern neighbourhood states, the citizens themselves are sort of run out of fatigue on some, or run into fatigue on these things, because they see somehow a very straitjacketed European approach that's really almost, as I myself, comes down to a sort of an imperialistic attitude over this broader area. And I suspect at the end of the day that's one of the reasons why the EU and the Russian Federation will never come as close together as they should do, because there is that conflict. In terms of Ukraine, well, one of the things we know about democracy from every country that has it now, I suppose, is that it isn't a straight line. It isn't a straight line. That it should ever be is naive. We have in Hungary we have problems with certain aspects of democracy within the European Union, and so and how we deal with that is even more difficult. Maybe just simply through the European Court of Justice, but we shouldn't expect there to be a complete linear move from difficult democracy to perfect democracy. It doesn't work like that. And wherever we think maybe Ukraine is or isn't, and maybe they must have a slightly different view of that to us, maybe, then I'm sure I'm very optimistic that it's in the right direction. The elections that you had, yes, were is what's happened maybe a little bit after that. Then I think we have to understand that. The trouble is these things therefore take longer than we would hope.
If I may, just a very brief comment, I would like to link this to the European Union and the association which we are looking for. Certainly there are two schools of thought. One is that you have to get perfect, and only after. Well, and the other one, especially for which is stemming from newly independent states, is yes, we are not perfect. I don't know how long will it take us to get perfect, but let us do it together. And let us, step by step, getting closer and making better our electoral system and whatnot. Because I really believe that the attitude that, and by the way, with every passing year, a new conditionality comes up. After you fulfill one, there's another one coming up. Yes, you have to. That is a real problem. Consistency between applicants or people that Europe deals with and changing conditions. I agree with you. Absolutely, is an issue that the European Union. And
has.
One figure in our association agreement, the CFTA, or in this agreement, there are 61%, almost 61%, 60% of acquis communautaire, which are fulfilled or complete only after you become an eligible applicant. So without even a hint about prospects of membership, you have completed if it is signed and ratified, and if it becomes the internal law, then 60% of acquis communautaire for Ukraine or for any other country that is on the path are already there. So I would appeal for, and we do appeal to those, and we make this point very clear, that while appreciating criticism and recommendations, we have to be very sort of appreciated as well, the efforts of the given country.
Dr. Davids, before we open up to the floor, any thoughts on this idea that past democracy is not...
The ambassador makes a very interesting point, something that I've long thought about. If people believe that doing the chapters of the acquis will help to modernize your own country, whether you apply to join the EU or not, just going through the exercise of doing what is the different chapters of the acquis would actually be an enormously self-regenerative process. I suspect, and don't please quote me on this, but I suspect that this is what the Turks are doing. I don't think the Turks have the slightest intention of being a part of the EU, but they're using the EU as an excuse to actually modernize Turkey and to bring Turkey up to Western standards by using the acquis. So they're going through the chapters, modernizing their administrative structures, their systems, their judicial structures, with a view, they say, one day to applying to join the EU. But I think they are going to do that anyway for themselves as a very good thing to do. Now, I would strongly recommend that other countries think about that, whether or not they want to join the EU and be run from Brussels. I see very few countries who want to do that. Why should they want to give up being run from somewhere else and then go and be run from Brussels? But leave that alone. As a method of modernizing one's own system, it's a good thing to do.
I'd just like to open this up quickly, if we can, to the floor. I know the gentleman here has that question.
Aram Margarian from the Embassy of Armenia. As one of the neighborhood countries, I also